I'm Sean Fennessey, and this is The Big Picture, a conversation show about the flaw in death's design. CR is here, and today we will be discussing the fantastic success of Final Destination Bloodlines and rank our favorite kills in this newly revived 6-film series. But first, Chris, we've just come back from a journey looking death right in the eye, actually. How are you feeling?
Honestly, I feel fantastic. I think every man in America should be forced to play 90 holes.
In 2.5 days?
In 2.5 days.
We did it in Oregon. We're back.
That's how we maha. Yeah.
We are, I do feel healthy again.
I know.
I feel like I am rejuvenated, reborn in so many ways.
It turns out being hunched over our laptops, furiously like reading takes and banging out outlines for movie podcasts is not the healthiest way to live your life.
I watched 0 films on Friday, 0 films on Saturday, and 0 films on Sunday.
That's actually a lie, because I was, on Monday you watched
On Monday I watched films. I watched not 1 but 2 Final Destination movies to prepare for this conversation.
Also, you watched Final Destination on a plane.
I did.
Which was incredible. I watched Final Destination on a roller coaster when we got back to Los Angeles.
Straight to Magic Mountain off the plane.
We should say, though, it did feel like Death, who in the earlier Final Destination films is almost realized as like
almost a character
figure walking around.
Yeah.
As we were driving to a place out on the Oregon coast to play golf out in Bandon, we were sitting in the back seat of a large Chevy Suburban, and 2 furiously speeding logging trucks went flying by us in the other direction, and it almost felt like Death was with us.
Yeah, I fully agree. And you and I in the backseat were making a lot of in-jokes about Final Destination to our 2 other pals who have probably seen a collective 0 minutes of this deranged franchise. But we were looking for every opportunity, every gorge we passed, every plane overhead, every rampant golf cart racing across the landscape. I was thinking this could be it.
And I think, you know, I have some trouble with forced carries. I'm not the longest driver of the bunch, but knowing FDBL was #1 at the box office, I think gave me a little boost.
Yeah, you could say, oh, it's so great, Minecraft, Sinners, we're so back, yada, yada. No, we're back. Like, this is the most back you can be when Final Destination Bloodlines, the 6th film in a basically dead horror franchise that was born of the ashes of the Limp Bizkit shitcore 2000s, is making $50 million? Oh my God. America loves horror. They love to watch teenagers get their throats slashed and their heads cut off.
Yeah.
What an amazing country, honestly.
I know.
It's terrible, but it's so good.
Do you think that this is like our true id?
Yes.
Like, it's like, this is the thing that we all can agree on, aside from the 2 guys we were driving around with all weekend. This is the thing that, like, my wife was next to me giggling with glee as people toppled out of Space Needles and stepped in glass and got their faces run over by lawnmowers. I think that this is actually, I would actually recommend to any fan of cinema, any fan of movies, I would say, you will not remember a single character with the exception of Ali Larter's Clear Rivers character from the early films.
Clear Rivers.
But if you go, you watch this, it's like watching De Palma cook, man. It's like watching Bertolucci make The Conformist. That's the bloodline I'm talking about. It's pure cinema.
It really is in so many ways. It's such a strange artifact of a certain time. So the fact that it has come back, you know, the producer of this movie is John Watts, who is best known for directing some very successful Spider-Man movies and the less successful Wolves. I guess he and his wife and producing partner were fans of this series.
Yeah, Diane McGonigal. Yeah, so they revived this franchise.
Yeah, they identified Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein, who got us off a script from Guy Busick and Laurie Evans Taylor.
And worth noting, Guy Busick also helped revive the Scream franchise with the Radio Silence guys.
That's right. And so shout out to him because he knows what he's doing, because Final Destination Bloodlines, not only has it been a massive success, $100 million around the world in one weekend, but I think there's a case to be made it's the best movie in the franchise. And we can kind of talk through that. What that actually means for this to be the best movie is kind of debatable because, as you said, character names and emotional complexity is not really a part of what this is all about. This is a series of movies about near and certain kills. You know, there is just a raft of impending doom awaiting every figure that you meet in these movies. This one's no exception. It's pretty smart, though. So the storyline is basically a college student is having these recurring nightmares, which is a little bit different from the typical visions that we see ahead of a natural disaster in the previous films. But that leads her to then sort of track down her family history and see the role that her grandmother played in a catastrophic incident some 50 years earlier.
At a Space Needle-esque restaurant.
Yes, the Skyview restaurant. Do we know what city this is taking place in?
I read PNW, some sort of Seattle, Portland, possibly Eugene, where we just spent our Monday afternoon.
Could be. And after she survived this insane event in the 1960s, she's lived her entire life ducking death.
Yes.
And in doing so, her entire family has been able to avoid death's recompense, basically. And this college student becoming aware of this and encountering her grandmother after so many years, and then later her estranged mother and her cousins, and the way that they all get sucked literally into the vortex of pain that this movie series shows us, I thought was a smart twist on it, because it gave us it gave you new lore, and you didn't have to go revisit any of the first 5 movies to really get it. But if you are a fan of the franchise, there are a lot of nods.
There's a surprising amount of connective tissue in these films. Not only are characters referenced many times, but in the previous, I guess that would have been Final Destination 5,
yes,
right? No, not to spoil the entire franchise, but please just do the work before you listen to this podcast. But I believe at the end of 5, the main 2 characters board a plane that becomes the plane crash in Final Destination 1. So we find out that Final Destination 5
is a prequel
to Final Destination.
And that movie came out 14 years ago. And this movie feels like a prequel to that prequel in some ways.
Yeah, because it starts the bloodline.
Right.
Because basically Steph, the main character's grandmother, her staying alive, I think, is what has kept death at bay.
Correct.
She lives in a cabin in the woods that she is death-proofed. And then when she and Steph meet, and she's like, okay, like we're going to step out and greet the world, she's greeted by death.
The movie opens, as all of these movies do, with the
premonition.
Extraordinary premonition. And this one in particular, you could make the case that this is up there with the plane crash in the first film in terms of the scale and the devastation. There's not as many deaths as there are in that first film, but the destruction after the flooring of a glass dance floor in an elevated restaurant cracks, shifting the entire balance of this massive art edifice, leading to like dozens of deaths.
When we were coming up on that opening sequence and you saw the Skyview restaurant for the first time, did you immediately start envisioning like how people were going to die?
Pretty much, yeah. I think
it's part of one of the most fun things is when the setup starts and you're like, oh, I bet this is going to happen.
Well, all of these movies nudge you so specifically toward that feeling of danger where you can almost always hear an exacerbated sound design where like a piece of wood is breaking or a bolt is loosening or there's a jarring sound of a whirring fan or a lawnmower. There's always some machinery that is about to break. And the Skyview restaurant in particular has a series of events. It's often described as like a Rube Goldberg machine.
Yeah.
Sort of like the opening segments
Domino
of Pee Wee Herman's
yeah.
Breakfast, where, you've got the mousetrap circumstance where everything unfurls. The level of creativity in this one is just as good as the very best of this franchise. I'm like kind of surprised and yet not. This also just kind of feels like James Bond or Abbott and Costello movies where I'm like, just give me one of these every 4 years and I'm going to enjoy it.
Absolutely.
It's kind of weird that it went away for as long as it did.
Yeah. And I really appreciate the fact that they make so little gestures towards like making this like an interconnected universe that you have. I mean, like there are obviously like, I think they reference characters in Bloodlines. They reference Clear Rivers. They reference Devon Sawa's character from the first one, I believe. A lot of the times people are like, it's the anniversary of the plane crash where that kid had the premonition. But for the most part, this is like you go in, you pay your money, you get 6 kill sequences. There is some chatter in between, and then you leave deeply, deeply satisfied with like few exceptions in this franchise. I've seen most of these in the movie theaters. It's kind of making me feel a bit my age that I remember seeing Final Destination when it came out, and then also really, really, really loving 3. That's the Mary Elizabeth Winstead one. 2 I really enjoyed, but was pretty stupid. But like we can get into ranking the movies and ranking the kills. Is there other Bloodline stuff you want to get into, like in terms of the story?
No, I mean, I think if you really want to see this movie and we're not among the paying public in the first weekend, you probably don't want to hear any more about the kills.
Yeah.
But we should talk about the kills in this one and talk about how they work. The movies are defined by the kills.
Yeah.
They're not defined by character development. And so if the kills are creative and there are a handful in Bloodlines that are as like fun as anything that we've seen, then you're probably going to dig this movie. This one has, of course, that Skyview instance that we're referring to.
Yep.
When we were in Las Vegas, Amanda and I got a chance to see the 10-minute sequence that takes place in a hospital.
Yes.
That opens with the attempt to acquire a peanut snack from a vending machine to send one of the characters into kind of anaphylactic shock to stop their heart.
Yeah, one of the things you need to know about FD is that if you take a life, you give life. So there's even a very funny, morbid moment in this hospital where 2 characters considered killing a baby to gain that character's lifespan.
Yes.
But what they really decide to do is to do a little Flatliners action where they're going to like kill a guy, bring him back to life easily.
Yes.
And then they'll basically skip the line on death. And the character who has got this idea and who is going to do the running of this patient back and forth is my favorite character in Bloodlines. And I was just about to say his name, but one of the things that I can't do, Sean, is remember the names of any characters in any Final Destination movie outside of like 3 people.
I'm happy to tell you his name is Eric Campbell.
Okay. And his brother... His half-brother is named what?
Bobby Campbell.
Right.
And they're played by Richard Harmon and Owen Joyner, respectively.
And Richard Harmon plays Eric?
Richard Harmon plays Eric.
Yeah,
yes.
I saw some people commenting online that he is very Kyle Gallner coded.
He is. He's very Final Destination coded. And by that, I mean...
Well, Ian McKinley from Final Destination 3 is certainly in this dude's bloodline.
Yeah, there's a kind of like...
goth
Urban
hipster?
Outfitters goth like dipshit that... is just kind of recurs in these movies. There's always a guy,
my favorite guys,
jet black hair, earrings, nose ring, a lot of tattoos, eye black, and just like a generally bad attitude
and
towards
has like
the world.
is either really cynical about everything or is like this is exactly confirming my worldview that death is hunting us.
Yes, I mean, and these movies are very post Scream. So, like you said, with Guy Busick having a writing credit on this. These films being revived in the aftermath of the Scream revival and in the same summer when I Know What You Did Last Summer is coming, like that roughly late 90s through mid 2000s wave of horror kind of brought horror back. I mean, horror in the early 90s was not great.
When the last Scream, I mean, I do this pretty frequently anyway, but when the last Scream came out, my wife and I went on a crazy deep dive, of like all the horror we could find from the late 90s. And it's definitely... was a throwback of like basically like broads wearing very little, guys who are absolute dirtbag scumbags.
Yes.
2 normal people at the center of it, but they're just inexplicably surrounded by the worst fucking friends in the whole world. But they're just so enjoyable, like the group dynamic.
These movies are really gnarly, but they're also really silly. Like the wave that you're talking about that includes like, urban legends, and then ultimately what I think kind of culminated in Platinum Dunes or sort of reviving all of the classics, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Last House on the Left. Those movies were really grim. They were stylish, but they were really violent and nasty. The Final Destination movies are really fun, and this movie, Bloodlines, captures the fun aspect of it. And this kill that we're talking about that takes place in the hospital is just tremendously creative and strange and gross.
We've given our spoiler warning. Let's describe what happens to Eric.
They capture the peanut snack.
And it's worth noting that Eric is a big fan of body art and piercing.
Yes.
He is a tattoo artist and a piercer himself, lower down on the professional ladder than maybe he would like to be. But we find has many body piercings, including ones we didn't know about, like the ones in his nipples and the ones in his dick.
Yeah.
And when the MRI machine is turned on to what I did not know existed, which is research level, it apparently emits a fucking Magneto in Genosha level tractor beam and rips all of the rings out of this dude's body. And then when his dick ring gets yanked, he himself flies into the MRI machine.
In part because a wheelchair is also sucked into the
Yes.
machine, carrying him forward.
Yes, but he goes dick first into the MRI machine and gets folded up and sucked in. And then while all this is happening, Bobby finally gets his hands on his EpiPen, stabs himself, comes back to life, stands up. The nurse opens the door and what decapitates him?
The ring from the vending machine
That's
that has
right.
been broken and shoots through the glass and is sucked towards the MRI machine into his forehead
Yeah.
and murders him.
Yeah.
Now, they showed us this scene in Las Vegas at CinemaCon. And in the immediate aftermath of that, the head of New Line said, "See you at the Oscars." It was easily the funniest thing that was uttered at that entire convention. You know, CinemaCon is just full of 50-something theater owners. Some of them, I'm sure, loved it, and some of them were absolutely horrified. But when they showed us that scene, I was like, this is going to be a top 20 movie of the year for me. Like, there's just no way. You can just tell when you have a handle on these kinds of kills that they're very, very comfortable with what they're doing.
It doesn't really overwork itself, too, because one of my favorite things to compile is reactions to deaths in Final Destination from other characters, which is often either incredibly funny or way over dramatic. So it's either like lots of tears and then a rainy funeral, or characters are like, no, and then instantly are like just going on with their lives. And it's like at any given point, anything that's ever happened in a Final Destination movie would be the craziest and worst thing that ever happened in my life. And I would be in therapy. I would be taking like sabbaticals from my job. These people are all like, oh God, I guess I have to go back to school the next day, even though a nail gun exploded my girlfriend's skull.
It's completely true. And it's because in addition to being these kill fests, the movies are sort of these like tiny little detective stories where the protagonist of the story needs to sort of hunt out the truth of the order of the deaths.
They're doubted at first. Everybody's just like, you're crazy. You probably had something to do with this NASCAR race going wrong. And then they ultimately, I mean, it's a really ingenious little idea where like at the premonition, you know, so this person experiences their vision and then they save kind of a random collection of people who listen to them or happen to step aside or get caught up in, you know, whatever. And so that you're left with is a kind of ragtag group of people who aren't actually friends or don't really believe each other. So they're always like, I'll be doing this on my own. Thank you very much. As they walk into like a plane of glass.
It's an ingenious little design. In addition to that kill in Bloodlines, there's an extremely memorable family barbecue sequence, which is spotlit in the trailer if people haven't seen it. It features a stray piece of glass and the way that it kind of like skips around the backyard and signaling that someone is going to get ensnared by this little shard of glass that's in the ice.
Let's say something here. This family has been afflicted with multiple instances of incredible mental health struggles.
Yes.
The grandmother is living in a death-proof cabin. Steph's mother abandoned her at a young age because she wanted to take death away from her. There is like a very interesting mixture of families, but like adoptions and like all these kids, but they're all like high school, college age. And I have never seen so many like frozen margaritas and beers getting popped at a party with like 19-year-olds.
It's a really good point. There's some young kids there.
He has all of his kids making blended drinks. Now, they also all made, like, I think the actors may all be like 32. And it just threw me off that it was like, they just come from their grandmother's funeral. And they were in a sunny garden getting like plowed like the next beat. And the dad is just like, well, we're all together.
This is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. Family and getting fucking killed. The kill related to the glass is also awesome. A lawnmower yet again wreaks havoc in this series. Not the first time a lawnmower has triggered a truly gruesome death in this franchise. And then there are a few others in the film that are, you know, very effective. The trash compactor in particular is very funny because of the way that it is predicted, if not, there's not a premonition per se. There's more like the understanding that in fact she may have a power that many characters exhibit in the series.
She's got a clarity about death's design that is pretty unprecedented in this film. So she can tell something is going to happen with a leaf blower and a soccer ball and a trash truck. and it's just she gets it in the wrong sequence and with the wrong person.
Kind of a little homage to Star Wars: A New Hope there as well. Did you notice that?
Yeah, that's right. And Julie winds up getting her melon exploded by a trash compactor in the back of a trash truck.
Yes. Yeah. If you're into heads being crushed, this is really the franchise for you. There are a few other ones. There's a particular callback at the very end of the movie that is extremely amusing. The other thing is when these movies end, they tend to end on the most utterly brutal death and then a hard cut to black followed by some anonymous rock band being like, yeah!
I think you can spoil it because it's one of the things that's been emergent in the discourse around Final Destination is the power of the premonition in FD2.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the logging truck. Aforementioned Sean and I driving by those logging trucks and just being like, what if this is it?
Yep, we were in FD town.
I still, to this day, when I'm driving on the 5, like am fixated on what is in the back of a truck and thinking about what would happen if a refrigerator jostled loose from this pickup and went flying into my face. The logging highway truck thing has gotten so big, I think, in the minds of people who watch these movies that now it seems like the logging truck is taking on a character of its own and is popping up in the films and especially in Bloodlines at the end.
It's because the logs have become a character. Like it is one of the best in jokes that is actually an essential part of telling the story. So before we get into the actual kills across the series themselves, I do want to cite a few more things that recur throughout the franchise.
Sure. Because
this is in some ways like Star Wars as well. There is an extended kind of cinematic mythology.
It is a lot like Star Wars.
It certainly gets me excited.
Should we pitch Disney? Well, who does these movies? Warner Brothers.
Well, it's Warner Brothers now, yes.
Another Mike and Pam triple, you know?
I mean, they're crushing it.
They're so good.
They're actually exactly what movies needed. I don't really know what else to say. The biggest hit of the biggest movie of the year for kids, the biggest movie of the year for adults, and the biggest movie of the year for shitlords.
Yeah.
Like that's their 3 for 3.
Do you think we should pitch them on an HBO streaming series that's like the Andor of Final Destination? Like the heady, revolutionary, in-depth, novelistic take on what's happening in between the kills.
I want like the Celine Sciamma version, you know, where she like really explores a relationship between a mother and a daughter that culminates in them both being decapitated. That's really what I'm most interested in. There's a lot of different ways you could go with these films. I'm really glad that
honestly, Portrait of a Lady on Fire would be a good kill.
It's a very good point. There are several burnings in these movies as well. So I mentioned that like this really comes out of a very discrete time in history that I'm sure many of the listeners of this show were very young for. I remember not very fondly culturally when flip phones hit the world.
Yep.
Rap rock,
Creed
new
was
metal,
on the charts.
Yes, was all the rage. Stained and Limp Bizkit and Power Man 5000 and lots of bands like that. Disturbed. And this idea of like everything being kind of shitty and happy about it.
Yeah.
Kind of smugness in our own filth. And this franchise is a pre 9/11 franchise. It launches in 2000.
It is.
And it really launches.
The war on terror had a profound effect on Final Destination.
But my point is that it launches with a plane crash.
Yeah.
And it probably doesn't exist if the movie has to wait 1 year. You wouldn't build a horror franchise on the back of a plane crash in the fall of 2001.
Yes.
But in 2000, it was like, this is great. We're going to kill a bunch of teenagers in a plane crash.
And it did tap into when you rewatched Final Destination 1. I remember, when did it come out? It came out in 2000?
Yes, 2000.
I remember rewatching it on DVD after, I can't believe I'm saying this, after 9/11 and just being like, man, it does hit different. And it does like, you do get a little bit more nervous about, I think now my consciousness of flights has gone like all the way back around to where I'm like, as long as I just arrive somewhere. But there was like a solid couple years there where I was like, wanted to see the mechanic and be like, did you give this a good once over? Tighten this up. The lug nuts are all good. And it's wild that's what, I mean, I still think I'm more scared of roller coasters than I am planes because of these films.
Well, bridge disaster is a personal fear of mine.
Is it really?
It is, yeah.
Well, we can get into that in a second. So keep going through the hallmarks here.
So almost all of these movies are centered on one, if not more, disenchanted teenagers. And they all ultimately avoid like a very grisly death And then that leads to them coming together. Most of these kids are very attractive, but they're kind of awful. There's usually one woman, occasionally a man, but usually one woman who seems like a decent person at the center of the story. Maybe not, the valedictorian of their class, but like a normal girl. And for whatever reason, all of her friends and her, her girlfriend's boyfriend who died tragically, wants to fuck her too. But they all kind of deserve to die. So you don't really have to worry too much about getting too invested in them because when you start, these kids are doomed.
Yeah.
They all have to relearn the premise of the film. So in the first film, Devon Sawa's character, along with Ali Larter, kind of discover the arc of death.
Yes.
The fact that death exists and that death is kind of taking his or her time.
That there's an order to death.
Plowing through the order that he has set. But when you watch 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, they all have the same realization at roughly the end of the first act and beginning of the second act.
This is why local journalism matters. Honestly, we need storytellers.
And a lot of the time, it's usually like, I've just found this story on microfiche from the Seattle New Times. It appears there was a girl in 2000 who was decapitated. This girl set off the flaw in death's design. They always are repeating. It's like a local news story.
I have to admit, though, I find that when I try to tell you about stories that I've read, you're either dubious or you're like, sounds good, thanks for letting me know.
But you've always sourced it from Truth Social.
No,
I'm like,
but
I
if
can't trust you on
I think
this.
when I told you about the Qatari plane, you were like, okay, man.
No, that's not true. I just said I didn't know about that.
But if I was like, Sean, did you hear about this bridge collapse? I think death is embodied in like a wisp of wind that surrounds us, and that there is like there's like an order to like who's gonna die next. So just be careful out there. Would you would want me committed? Would you think that I was telling you the truth? What?
I would probably just go home and be like, Eileen, Ciara was a little off today. I don't know what kind of, maybe the milk was spoiled in his coffee. Not sure. Would you take oat milk?
Oat milk,
yeah. We talked about this a lot over the weekend. So that premonition that they see of the natural disaster usually leads to these 5 or 6 teenagers avoiding this disastrous event, which then leads to this kind of unfurling of Death's plan where one by one these characters are killed. But before they're killed, there's always some sort of cosmic metaphysical sign. Wind swirling, those ratcheted up noises, a radio on the fritz.
And one of these kids being like, it's not my time to die, see?
Right before a helicopter blade slices them.
I tricked death.
You'll also see a lot of accidental dripping on electrified devices.
Yeah, that's honestly the laziest part. There's a lot of the liquid so that the guy slips and accidentally hangs himself stuff. I'm more of a like, put me in a Home Depot and just let me see what happens.
Yeah, you never want to see somebody plug anything in this movie.
Yeah.
If somebody plugs something into a wall outlet, that person's getting fried. And if not, that's just a setup for the fake out, which is the other thing that you see. It makes these movies a little less fun to watch, I think, to identify all of these things. But watching them in succession as I did, it's very clear that there is a very specific rhythm to how they show us these deaths.
Final Destination Bloodlines has a really great fake out in the barbecue scene where somebody has left a rake underneath a trampoline and multiple people are just bouncing up and down on this old worn out trampoline. And finally a character is just like, wait, and spots the rake. But it's such a tease because I really wanted to know what happens when you hit a rake while you're on a trampoline.
It's a really good question.
Does it just get your foot? Does it go flying out? And
I don't know. I think foot pain comes second to eye pain. Eye pain, the idea of like a needle going into the eye is terrifying. But then following by like a shard of glass or a rake going through your foot, that's a problematic one. The fake out is always followed within a minute by a gnarly unforeseen kill.
Yes.
And usually not the character that you were expecting it to be. This usually comes as well with a counterintuitively peppy pop song soundtracking the circumstance. I was reminded of this last night while I watched The Final Destination, the 4th film in the franchise, when Why Can't We Be Friends is blaring out of a tow truck while a racist is dragged down the street after trying to put a cross on a black man's...
I forgot Michael T.
Williams' front yard.
Yeah.
Again, this was the 4th film in the franchise where they decided to introduce white supremacy. So this is a fucking crazy franchise. They're just like, oh yeah, by the way, this B-tier character is a hardcore racist.
He's in the KKK, yeah.
And then just the number one signature of the franchise is wildly elaborate gruesome death.
Yes.
That is the thing. Death after death after death. You know you're watching Final Destination.
I had one more note just to characterize, like to kind of just embellish on your thing about the mean-spirited characters and the guys listening to Biscuit. Some true Chester the Molester scumbag behavior on the part of the male characters. Guys who I feel like were early adopters of internet pornography.
Yeah.
And there's most of the first 3 films are like guys named Frankie Cheeks trying to take digital photography upskirts of women as they get on roller coasters.
Yes.
And be like, eh, and then they get fucking killed so hard. But it's really funny to go back and revisit this level of like commercial misogyny.
Yeah. It's
not to sound like a snowflake about FD. I'm like, I actually enjoy it. It's not like anybody gets out of these movies, so it's pretty funny.
Yeah. It's, what is the name of the American Pie character? Sherman.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Shermanator.
Yeah.
There's like, everyone is kind of the Shermanator in this movie. And that was an archetype. That was an archetype when we were growing up, and they managed to find a way to kill all these kids. So let's go through the kills.
Okay.
So 6 films total.
Do you want to just do...
Let's idea our 2 favorites from each.
Okay.
And have a little personal vote. And then I think we should take those 6 and rank those top 6 from each film. Sound good?
Yes.
So FD1, of course, you've got the plane crash. Plane crash is extremely dramatic. It's easily the highest death toll in the history of this franchise. 287 people die on that plane in that opening sequence. It includes a high school class that Devon Sawa and Ali Larder and Kerr Smith and a few handful of kids avoid on their way to Paris. So there's one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very famous bathroom chokeout.
I think this probably has to go in because of the elaborate nature of it. I think it shows you a lot of... It's got the fake out. It's got the liquid on the floor. It's got a little bit of the like death is right behind him. He can't see.
It kind of invents the franchise in a way, because the franchise is always open with these big multi-person kills, but they're defined by the single act, the single, mousetrap kill. This one's pretty good. Todd, R.I.P.
Todd, R.I.P.
Any other ones you want to cite?
Just before we go off of Todd's death, that then concludes Todd and his brother have now been killed in the first 30 minutes of this movie. Mm-hmm. And we do get one scene with their dad being like, "God damn you, Alex." And then he disappears, which is the same thing that happens in Bloodlines, is that the woman whose entire family has been decimated, is never seen again.
It's a good point.
Yeah, the mom, Brenda.
Yeah.
Did she just go stay with her sister or something? All of her children die.
That's a really good point. We never see her again, just because she's not a part of the Bloodlines.
None of the other characters are like, we should check on Brenda. She's had probably the worst.
Right, her husband and all 3 of her children are dead.
Yeah, and she also revealed to one of those children that
he was adopted
out of wedlock.
Oh, right, no, he was out of wedlock. That was a great twist too. These movies are fucking great. Other deaths in one that I enjoy, especially the train moment
for Billy.
Billy, Sean William Scott's character,
Billy Hitchcock
takes after a speeding train, nearly misses Alex. Billy is decapitated by shrapnel as the train races by. Moments before that, he says he wants to live to see the Jets win a Super Bowl. For the record, the first film takes place on Long Island. I've never felt more seen than Billy being killed.
Is he wearing an Islanders jersey the entire movie?
I think he is. Just want to note that this film was made in 2000. The Jets have not been to the Super Bowl since this movie was made. They actually haven't been in the Super Bowl in 60 years.
Oh my God.
I really enjoyed Billy. And then the conclusion of the film is the introduction of this idea of like the end kill.
Yes.
The fade to black kill.
Yeah.
Which comes when Carter saves Alex's life, the Devon Sawa character, which means it skips Alex and then immediately Carter is crushed by a giant sign in Paris. 294 deaths total.
The plane takes up a lot.
The plane takes up, yeah. There's only actually 6 kills in the movie otherwise, which sounds like a lot, but it's weirdly not.
This is going to sound weird, but this movie is almost a little bit more like thrillery. Like even the plane crash is like kind of Finchery, where it's like everything is insert shots of like a bolt loosening or like the vent. It's a really good job of depicting that feeling you get when you walk on and the plane is a little decrepit.
Yes.
You ever get on and you're just like, man, the carpet.
Are you saying something about the flight yesterday?
No, I just mean that you can tell sometimes when this is a plane from like 2006, or 98 or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, one other thing that the first film does is every character is named after a significant figure in horror history. So you've got Alex Browning, the Sawa character, after Todd Browning. You've got Valerie Luton as the teacher after Val Luton, the famous horror film producer. You got Billy Hitchcock, of course, a very recognizable one. You've got Terry Chaney, Lon Chaney. You've got, lots and lots, Larry Murnau. You've got like all of these examples of great cinematic horror meisters being recognized in these films. And these films are weird. They're weirdly like, they're junky, but they're perfect, and that is also a great tradition of horror, this sort of like exploitation, low budget movie that just kind of has something special in its DNA. Okay, so for the first film,
let's go.
Do you say bathroom? You say Todd?
I say Todd. Do you want to put plane crash or train shrapnel? I think plane crash has to be in there because it's so important. All right, I agree. So the first two, Todd and the plane crash.
Okay, Final Destination 2.
Oh my God.
I can't even really remember the plot of this movie very well. Obviously, it hinges on this extraordinary car crash sequence.
Yeah, and because of where it takes place, so basically this woman... Who's the main girl character? Is it Nora or something like that?
That sounds right.
But I don't know. But she has a vision as she's about to pull into a highway to go on a road trip with her girlfriend and two of the worst guys of all time.
Yeah.
Which I guess are their boyfriends.
It's Kimberly,
sorry.
Yes. Kimberly Corman, named after Roger Corman.
Now she sees this incredible accident take place where a logging truck has an accident, loses all of its timber, that everybody gets decapitated. There are people on fire who then get hit by trucks. There's a really bitchy ad woman who's like smoking Virginia Slims. She dies, all this stuff. So the premonition brings together a very interesting, diverse group of people, including the coked out guy. Is that Burke?
Mm-hmm.
What's his name?
Thomas Burke.
Yeah. Thomas Burke.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an odd collection of people, very different from most of the other movies. Yeah. It's like more of a ragtag.
Because usually it's like, it's a high school class that's brought together somehow.
Exactly. And this one features, the logging sequence is, I think, the signature sequence in the whole series.
Yeah.
It still is incredibly effective. And I think what I had forgotten is usually these characters have these extraordinary premonitions, and then they see some of the chaos, but not necessarily all of the chaos.
Yes.
For example, in the first film, they see the plane crash in the distance through a window after it actually transpires. In the race car crash that we'll talk about from the Final Destination.
Which is 4, right? Yeah.
They don't actually witness it. They only witness the carnage of people piling out of the stadium.
And then the woman who's standing there, and then the tire comes at her.
Tough beat.
So for the logging, this is goated Hall of Fame. I think everybody kind of agrees it's the best premonition. It's got a great follow-up button kill where they think that they've escaped everything and her friends are still inexplicably sitting in the Jeep, and another truck just completely mows them down and kills them. Funny to see Justine Machado, who has gone on to bigger and better things, as a random pregnant lady in this. Not a lot, I would say, with the exception of Ali Larder, not a lot of, and Sean William Scott, of people going on to great things after a Final Destination movie.
Well, there's a notable exception in 3.
Well, yeah, obviously
we will get to her. So the logging to me is the clear-cut 1A. Additional kills, the terrace ladder, which is presaged by a dramatic escape from a burning kitchen in which several appliances go haywire.
This is also where that guy has his hand in his food disposal drain for a solid 2 minutes, where you're like, this is going to be so epic when this disposal somehow goes on.
Yes.
And he loses his hand, and then whatever happens
next, never happens.
And they just fake you out.
It's a perfect fake out, and then ultimately he escapes his burning kitchen only to be laid on his back as the terrace ladder in his building slides all the way down to within, I'd say, about a foot of his eye and stops.
Do you know one of the craziest things about this country is that I do feel like anecdotally, when I used to go visit my grandma in Florida, I feel like the switch for the food disposal was real close to the kitchen light. That was in play, that you could accidentally flip on the food disposal.
I have one of those now.
How close is it to your kitchen light though?
Not close.
Okay. Well, I think technically we used to get a little...
Why would your kitchen light be over the sink?
Okay, so you walk in, door, kitchen to the left, right? You walk and you feel over there. I think they only had one panel for the electrics.
Do you to have your rooms all cordoned off, or do you like to have an open floor plan?
Cordoned.
You like cordoned off.
Yeah.
You want to be in the kitchen.
I like
when
a
it's kitchen
warren
time.
of rooms.
A warren of
Yeah,
rooms.
like a lot of rooms. You know, I don't like open floor
I
plan.
see. So you would prefer to live in like sort of an ancient castle.
I mean, I think castles have open floor plans, don't they? You walk into great
No,
dining halls and stuff.
they have a great hall, but then they have the
I want to live in
series
the
of
house
tower
from Clue.
rooms. Yeah, the house from Clue.
Lots of secret
Okay.
passageways.
You know what I like is a drawing room. Wouldn't you like to have a drawing room? I really want to study. When I'll know that I've made it, when I have a home that has a study.
Will there be a TV in the study? Or will this film room be separate?
Let's see how this YouTube thing keeps going.
Okay.
You know, like if we keep having success with this, then yeah, I'll definitely put a TV in my drawing room. Hot Rod guy, he gets his eyes blasted out by a terrorist ladder.
Yeah, that's
very
awesome.
violent, super fun kill. The plate glass smash. So Tim, one of the characters, escapes the dentist's office where it looks like for sure he's going to be somehow decapitated or have his mouth
He's
torn
going to choke
apart.
to death because like a goldfish jumps in his throat.
That's right. They got the goldfish. Thank you. Only to be crushed by a plate glass window that falls from the sky
In front of his mom.
while being transported by a crane.
He dies in front of his mom. And she's like, no.
Uh,
Then she gets her head decapitated by an elevator door.
yes, in the next scene, she
Yeah.
literally is. Her hair is caught by the man with the hook hands. Is that right? In a cart, and she becomes trapped by the neck in an elevator and is decapitated.
Mhm.
Super chill franchise. This is that scene is preceded by 9 strangers in a room being like, "What do you mean? There's an order?" Then there's a car crash. So as a trooper and a pregnant woman swerve, gang comes into the rear side into a truck full of PVC pipes.
Yeah.
So Eugene gets pierced by the pipes. The ambulance pulls away. A news truck springs a gas leak. The firefighters attempt to free Kat from the truck, but when the airbag releases, she's impaled by the piping in the car seat.
Mhm.
Rory is then subsequently cut in 3 by flying barbed wire that is loosed somehow.
It's pretty amazing because this one is like the figure 8
Yes.
of death. It's
That's-
like, wow,
that's
you
it.
can't believe like they've brought so many different aspects of death into one scene.
I totally agree. It's only 2 deaths, but it has triple axle
Yeah.
energy. So I like that one quite a bit. And then the hospital oxygen explosion.
Significant because this marks the end of Clear.
Clear finds Eugene in the hospital, but also discovers a leaky oxygen tank that immediately incinerates her and him. Another 2 deaths. Allie Larder hasn't been seen all the way up until Landman. It was FD2, nothing for 23 years.
She was like Terrence Malick.
And then Landman season 1 is somehow
back to
Clear
do the-
Rivers returned.
She came back to do the Thin Red Line.
Is Clear Rivers the name of her character in Landman?
No, it is not.
What is it?
I can't remember her first name.
Is it Billy Bob Thornton's?
You know, I gotta tell you, Landman, one of my favorite shows that I saw last year. Angela is her name.
Okay.
Again, the characters are not that memorable in terms of their names.
How's she doing? I didn't watch Landman.
She is primarily focused on after she gets divorced from her ex and goes back to Billy Bob's Tommy character. Her and her teenage daughter spend a lot of time trying to reawaken the libido of people living in a senior care center. So they like want them to feel sexually active again and take them to a male and female strip bar, like stripper bar, exotic dancing. True story. And meanwhile, like Billy Bob Thornton gets captured by the cartel.
Wait, they split up in the show?
They're broken up when the show starts.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Get back together. She moves from like Dallas to move in with him, or Houston, I don't know. And then like over the course of the season, the way she's like kind of keeping herself busy is by like reaching out to the older community of this town in the Permian Basin.
How do you feel about the way that Taylor Sheridan writes sex scenes?
I feel like it's pretty vividly realistic. I think he's really in touch with the amount of like Viagra guys are taking. Not me personally, but
How would you know that?
I think like the first scene, Billy Bob Thornton is like shooting himself up with testosterone
Oh, wow. Okay.
or something,
That's what you do before every episode of The Watch. Right in the neck.
just like an alpha Greenwald.
Oh, do you, Andy?
Yeah. Oh, you don't like Last of Us now, cuck.
Okay, last kill in FD2 is the barbecue explosion. After learning that her brother was saved from being hit by the news van, we cut away to him at the grill when he explodes in a fiery blast at the end of the film. The button kill is very funny.
It's very good. I think I'm going to go with the car crash just because it brings in so many different elements on top of one of the all-time great sequences in film history, which is the logging truck.
Okay, so we've got 2 there. FD3.
Okay, let's talk about her.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
There's been 2 really seminal performances by women in film in my life. There's Meryl Streep in The Deer Hunter, and there's MEW in FD3.
Yep. She's
so far and away the greatest actress who's ever participated in one of these
Yes.
films. Best actor.
Yes.
And is so good. I believe I saw a Letterboxd comment about this movie where it's like Mary Elizabeth Winstead has chronic back pain from throwing this franchise on her shoulders.
Yeah. I mean, she is giving a very committed performance.
Yeah.
I think she actually has a real depth as an actor. And so this...
I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead. It's just wild to go watch her deal with a character named Frankie Cheeks.
I mean, she's just opposite also a lot of actors who you've never seen again.
Yeah.
You know, like Ryan Merriman and Chris Lemche and
who plays Ian
Alex
McKinley
Johns.
in this movie?
Chris Lemche.
Okay.
You know, nothing against those guys. They've had perfectly fine careers, but yeah, MEW is on a different level. This is the roller coaster film.
And I'm gonna zag here and say that while I am personally most scared of what is depicted in The Premonition, so don't really ride roller coasters because of Final Destination 3. Like the worst thing that could happen on a roller coaster.
You don't ride roller coasters?
Not really.
Haven't you and I been on a roller coaster before? Doesn't
We
your
went on,
wife love
California
roller coasters?
Screaming, she does. Yeah. But I don't really.
You came on California Screaming.
Yeah, I did it. I'll do it.
You were afraid.
I screamed. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm shocked. Were you hiding this from me when we were at California Adventure?
Well, I don't know if we talked about FD3. I mean, we went to California Adventure 5 or 6 years after this film came out. So I think that I think I may have suppressed the memory. But for a long time, I have just been like, and when I was in Portland over the summer, this like gravitron thing that swings people up and down in the air got stuck up in the air. It was on the news. So it's like these things happen. They don't tell you about it in the mainstream media.
The roller coaster.
But I'll never fucking ride like Batman, the Batman ride at Great Adventure,
Batman,
or those Kansas rides where they're like, this thing drops 300 stories and then does a 360.
You wouldn't do that because it's in the Midwest.
No, but
you don't
like
go to
if
flyover
one
country.
fucking thing goes wrong and you see these guys who are like, I'm listening to like 9
Theo Von.
Yeah. While I'm supposed to be operating this roller coaster, like I assume that the pilot who's flying my plane has had like plane experience, like pilot training.
You're assuming that, eh?
Yeah, but I don't know what the roller coaster guy has.
I mean, I think these films do a good job of showing you that it's basically a 16-year-old kid pressing a button.
Yeah. So while I think that in terms of its scope and vision, The Premonition is incredible. It's like I almost wanted it to be bloodier and more fucked up.
They do show a couple of clear headshots where somebody falls out of a roller coaster car and smashes their head against a steel beam.
But I will say that there are kills in FD3 that are better than The Premonition.
I'll go
kills.
with you on that. 10 riders reportedly died on this particular roller coaster disaster. One of the most famous kills in this franchise is the tanning bed.
Yes.
2 high school girls who managed to evade the roller coaster ride because of MEW's Premonition, go to a tanning bed. They bring a beverage with them as they shouldn't. The door accidentally closes to the room because of a fallen sunscreen bottle that gets lodged in the door. And the operator of the tanning bed is nowhere to be seen. And somehow the tanning beds get real hot.
Yeah.
This is real, again, shitcore culture where it's like girls are topless.
Naked girls getting fried to death.
Yes. It's very like 80s slasher,
and
actually.
Glass falling on them and stuff.
Extremely violent. The girls who are kind of like in the post Paris Hilton, Nicole Richie affectation of like hyper fake tan. It's really violent and gross. It is also a fun time at the movies for me.
I think the tanning bed has to go into the FDHOF.
I'm with you on that. I also really like the song choice, which is Love Roller Coaster, the 70s funk song with an immediate callback to the roller coaster disaster that happened 8 minutes prior. The next kill, I find to be one of the most confusing in the series.
Yeah.
So Frankie Cheeks, the aforementioned horn dog pervert who is constantly trying to snap photos of the girls in this series,
Yes.
is at a drive-thru. Behind him at the drive-thru are MEW and her best friend's boyfriend.
Her best friend is dead.
Yes, her best friend is dead. And they are on the trail trying to figure out what's going on with Death. There's another car behind them. And then for some reason, a truck perpendicular to MEW's car backs into the side of it.
Yeah.
Is it like a whiskey truck?
They're at a drive-through. Yeah, I don't.
Why is that truck parking there?
This is where it's like, is Death driving the car kind of stuff,
Okay.
and it doesn't have the elaborate setup that I think some of the other kills in this film do.
It's just a little less
Imaginative.
coherent. Yeah, a little less. And then another truck starts barreling down a hill, bashes into those other trucks. Somehow, MEW and her girlfriend's boyfriend escape. Frank catches a motor blade directly in the back of the head.
Yeah, I hope that I wanted that character to have a more gruesome death or a more like elaborate one.
The camera does hold pretty long on the molding of his, decapitated skull, which is pretty amusing. I thought it was okay, but it just kind of doesn't make that much sense. The next one is the Lewis, the football player's weightlifting decapitation with the swinging swords fake out.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty fun.
Yes.
Not bad.
Yes, but nothing compares to the Home Depot.
Followed by the Home Depot forklift disaster. Ian McKinley, the aforementioned Disturbed fan, avoids the falling fence posts that are in the Polaroids that MEW consistently looks back to. But as he does that and narrowly avoids all of the falling objects in this storeroom at a Home Depot-esque home goods store, his girlfriend, Erin, is accidentally backed into another organizing shelf that has a stray nail gun in it.
She slips, falls, winds up getting nail gunned both in the back and front of her head.
I think just the back.
Oh, just the back.
Yeah, I think the nails are shot through her face.
But one of the great things about it is that we find out how many nails are in a nail gun because they all go into her head. And there's multiple cutaways to Ian being like, no! And then back to Erin as more nails go into her head.
Yeah, that is a good cut.
Why would you be in a Home Depot if you were a character in a Final Destination movie?
It's a wonderful question.
I would never drive, I would never fly, and I would never go to a home repair store.
Every one of these films needs an arrogant character. Ian is the arrogant character.
Yeah, he's like, I've cheated death.
Yes, but of course he hasn't. Next, we go to the 300th fireworks display. Julie's friend Perry is impaled by a flag loosened by a stampeding white horse that nearly strangled her sister Julie with a runaway rope.
Yes.
This one's extremely elaborate. Also, when we were talking about the film Havoc and sliding down the harpoon.
Oh, yeah.
This kind of has a similar
Do you
action
think that
of
they were
sliding down the flag.
inspired by FD3?
I hope so. I think that would be nice.
I bet you Gareth Evans loves these movies.
I would be surprised. This one's pretty fun. Then there's Ian's revenge at the same celebration. Wendy thinks Ian will be the cause of her death at the celebration because she's wearing a McKinley shirt in one of the photos that's taken.
Oh.
So he confronts her, and then he claims he's beaten Death after fireworks shoot at him, and they narrowly miss.
All go right by him, yeah.
And then large scaffolding falls on him and kills him.
Yeah. I really enjoy watching Ian die, but creatively, it's not the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Agreed. Now, the final kill in this series is the subway rendezvous, where some months later, Wendy, MEW's character, is in college.
Everybody thinks that once they've gotten to the end of this movie, it's time to start traveling again.
Yeah. Are they in New York? Well, they must be.
Yeah.
It's certainly a New York City subway. And Wendy meets her sister Julie, played by Amanda Crew, we should say, who did appear on the show Silicon Valley.
Sure.
That's the only other credit I can think
I'm
of
not
for
trying
her.
to denigrate anybody's achievements. There was plenty of like WB stars in the first couple of these movies. Like, everybody does a great job.
Julie and Wendy are clearly meeting up for the night, and they see out of the corner of their eye Kevin, her old friend's boyfriend, is on the same train. And the three of them meet up, and immediately as they encounter one another, Wendy immediately has a premonition again about a brutal subway collision, which ends with her being smashed by a subway car, an oncoming subway car, after she's been thrown from the one that she's riding. And then it happens anyway. And they all die. And apparently 10 people die. 31 people dead in this film.
I'm gonna say Tanning Bed and Home Depot are my two from FD3.
I'll rock with you on that.
Okay.
Let's go to the Final Destination. We already mentioned the raceway car crash disaster. Several beheadings, dismemberments, burn victims, and car crash assassinations. Literally cars flying into the crowd and killing people.
Yes.
This is a very gnarly one. This is widely considered the worst film in the franchise.
Yeah.
It's literally only 72 minutes or something like that with 82 minutes with credits.
Yeah.
The production value is lower. The CGI, there's significantly more in terms of the kills, but there's some clever kills. I mentioned the racist tow truck driver.
That was pretty good, actually.
Dragged alive while burning.
I want to shout out Hunt Wynorski, who is probably my favorite character in this film, and who gets his internal organs sucked out through a pool drain as he's swimming at the bottom of a pool.
Yes, Nick Zano, I believe, plays Hunter Wynorski. Shout out to Nick. There's also the lawnmower rock ricochet, where Samantha, played by the legendary Krista Allen, has just gotten a haircut and is exiting the haircut after a series of sliding chairs.
Is this where she's getting her pedicure as well?
I think just her hair.
Oh, okay.
And
right. And it's always like cutting right by her eye.
Yes,
and
the
stuff.
scissors are really close to her head. The chair is moving around a lot. We think she's going to get stabbed with something. And in fact, the door opens to the hair salon and a man with a lawnmower rides over a rock and the rock shoots forward and blasts through her eye.
Just
in front of her
before
children.
that, she says to her two sons, "I've got my eye on you."
It's great stuff.
Yeah.
There's also the mechanic who is impaled by a flying helium tank at his shop as they attempt to warn him of his impending death.
Yeah. Another place I wouldn't be working, a garage.
No, certainly not. Jonathan who is the kindly guy sitting in front of them wearing a cowboy hat, is sent to the hospital. And whilst in the hospital, it looks like he's going to recover when, in fact, an elderly man who's getting into a water tank in the floor above him in the hospital overflows and floods the ceiling, and then the bathtub falls from the floor above him and crushes him.
Yeah.
It's a really bad beat.
I like that one. That's a sneaky contender for me.
I agree. I'm a big fan of it as well. And then there's just chaos at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
Where like a series of people are hit by ambulances. And then there's like a mall sequence where people are getting hit by trucks inside of buildings. And part of the reason why this movie is like not very good is because it just kind of like completely loses its air in the last 10 minutes.
It trips over itself.
It really does.
So I will probably say for me, I really like the certain kills in the premonition for NASCAR. And then one nice thing is that even after they get out of the race and they're like, my premonition came true, still a NASCAR tire comes flying out of the stadium and kills a guy's girlfriend.
I would say that one and Hunt Wynorski are my two. Suck through the
guy
pool
getting
drain.
his guts sucked through a pool drain is amazing.
We're really doing the work here.
Yeah.
I feel like this is what it's all about.
FD5, I feel like we're back. 2011, one of the most confusing, not the premonition, but the literal setup for this movie starts at an office park.
And it's like a retreat.
No, it's so elaborate. It's a guy who has an internship for like a nameless, faceless, purposeless corporation. But he wants to get hired on full time, but also wants to be a chef and might go to Paris to work at like a culinary institute.
Right.
He's there and they're about to go on a retreat and his ex-girlfriend is there. His friend who has gotten him this internship is there. Their boss is there, who will later die in a fantastic way. David Koechner's there. And also, who else shows up? There's like a guy who's like a sort of operations manager who has some labor strife. Like there's so much workplace information that's conveyed way before we even get to the bridge. Most of the time, it's like we're getting on this plane and it crashes. We got on this roller coaster and it crashed. This is like a whole setup of a different film that then we get into a premonition.
In the premonition, all of the people you just identified die in a brutal North Bay Bridge collapse. I don't know if I don't have a fear of bridges, but I do have a fear of dying in a bridge collapse.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think the bridge is going to collapse.
Does that happen for you because of what Bane did to New York?
I think it was Pittsburgh. Heinz Ward was there, remember?
Pittsburgh doesn't have that many bridges, does it?
What is Gotham supposed to be?
Gotham, I think, is shot in Pittsburgh, but is in like spiritually New York.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
You don't want to talk about Bane and what he did to your psyche about Bridges? What about how did Bane affect your viewpoint on...
A lot of loyalty for a hired gun!
Oh, God.
The Bay Bridge is going in.
Okay.
The Hall of Fame. The rest of these...
No, you're wrong.
Are these good?
FD5 is actually secretly good.
But tell me your favorite. What is the best kill?
The balance beam is amazing.
The gymnastics kill is great, but that's the first one after.
Okay.
So Candace dies.
Yes. And the whole time you think she's going to step on a thumbtack on her balance beam.
Yes.
But instead she dies doing LeBron James chalk hands.
You think that they were Bronny fans?
11? So this is before the decision, right? Or it's right at the decision?
No, yes, it's at the decision, yeah. You think this wasn't like a shot at him?
I'd have to go back and compare the tape to find out when the decision happened versus when this film was released.
2010.
Oh, okay. So this is definitely
A reaction to the
LeBron
decision.
leaving Cleveland. And then I would just say that the falling Buddha after the acupuncture is really good.
It's okay.
The acupuncture is great.
That part, yes. A lot of like, don't put that needle in my soul.
Yeah.
I mean, there is another plane crash callback, right? Flight 180 falls from the sky and kills several of the key figures that were introduced to in the beginning of this film, leading to this series of dramatic deaths. I think like north of 20 people are killed in the finale of the movie. Over 100 people die in this movie. You would go gymnastics
and bridge.
Let's do bridge.
Gymnastics and bridge. I feel like they are much like a Motown album. They put their hits up front.
For the most part, I agree with you. Just to put a fine point on it for Bloodlines.
Yeah. 14 years later.
Is it possible that it's not the Skyview Restaurant Massacre?
I found myself distracted by the CGI in this.
Interesting.
So I think
You think Family Barbecue and the MRI Machine?
Yeah, exactly that.
I think I'm with you.
Okay.
MRI Machine is a world class.
It's one of the top 5 for sure for me.
Okay. So we've got MRI Machine and we've got the Family Barbecue for Bloodlines. Now, 6 films. We've chosen 12 contenders. Give me your 5 faves.
Off the top, just I'm blast shield down. Luke, Saber. I say logging.
That's 1.
MRI Machine.
Yep.
Balance beam.
Wow. Huge look for Final Destination 5. FD5 heads out there. I feel like Tanning Bed's got to be up there.
I know. I don't want it to seem like I'm, a caveman, but...
Because the girls are topless? There's nothing wrong with that. It's natural.
And then you pick one.
I think Hunt Wynorski getting his
inside
sucked out. And then I like particularly when they show you the water meter and then blood shoots through the top of it. That's a great moment. That's filmmaking.
How do you think that this podcast is going to be received? And do you think we did a good job?
Well, I know we did a good job.
Yeah.
By whom?
By Jack.
Jack, have you seen any of these films?
Watched Bloodlines last night.
How'd you feel about it?
I thought it was very good.
Had you seen any of the others?
Not in full, but I vividly remember being 14 and just scrubbing through every kill compilation on YouTube, which is probably why I'm normal.
That's the other thing is that you don't actually have to watch the entire film if you don't want to. I want to.
You know what we forgot to mention is Tony Todd.
Oh my God, of course.
Which is the other connective tissue throughout this entire franchise.
Yes, how could we have forgotten?
He actually gives a very moving final performance in this movie.
Excellent performance, an absolute horror icon.
Yeah.
And he's represented in amusing ways throughout the series. For example, he's the voice of the devil in the 3rd film. But he figures prominently in the 1st film and he figures prominently in this film. They do sort of stumble upon him in an odd way in Bloodlines.
Yes, he's working in the hospital.
Yes,
as
in the morgue.
Yeah, a coroner in the morgue there. But it's his last performance. He was a great character actor, wonderful.
And he died 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And I do believe this was his last performance.
Yeah.
And appeared in several great horror movies. Obviously, best known for Candyman and Candyman 2. But he is quite good in this movie. Thank you for remembering to give him a shout out.
You can't. But like to Jack's point, it's very easy to just go through the kill compilations. Part of the B-movie Mystery Science Theater fun of this whole thing, though, is watching these characters try to make some intellectual sense of what's going on and try to like come up with a plan, whether it's kill a baby or flatline myself.
Yeah. Did you feel that this new one took it to a greater extreme?
Well, I did love the twist in this one is that Steph drowns. And it is mentioned several times for no apparent purpose until it's revealed at the end that her younger brother is a junior lifeguard. Now, as a former lifeguard myself, I'll tell you that CPR is one of the first things you learn. It's one of the ways you get certified to be a lifeguard. You actually do get certified to be a lifeguard. I don't know if you're certified to run roller coasters. And he's able to revive Steph with CPR,
which allows it to skip her.
They assume. Then in an amazing moment, the younger brother is taking a girl to the prom, and the girl's dad comes out and is like, "Steph, heard you had a tough beat with drowning." And they're like, "Yeah, but he brought me back to life." And he's like, "Well, not really. If your heart was still going and you just lost consciousness, you were always alive." And then his daughter walks out wearing the same outfit as the grandmother wore to the Skyview restaurant, thus bringing it all together.
And then there is a brief callback to 3 where a train does not completely close its track, leading to a derailment.
Right.
And the derailment sends all of the freight flying through like a local neighborhood.
Probably killed 800 people.
Yeah, could have killed destroyed homes. Like an absolutely gnarly train derailment disaster, really putting the brutalists to shame in that respect. But
what if when the logs hit Steph, it was like da 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 da?
That is how I feel at the end of the movie. And then these logs that are being carried on this freight train fly through directly at us in the screen and kill our 2 main characters who we thought had survived, ending the film in perfect Final Destination fashion. These movies are so special, man.
Should we bring do we just have to like insta revive Brutalist? Should we just start talking about that again?
I'm so on the side of right on that one. I'm not even worried about it. We're good.
I just mean, like, do you want
it's
to
going to
talk
last
about
forever.
Okay,
we're good.
Cool.
What do you need to say?
I just think it was like we talked about it a bunch like when it came out and everything, but like I like mixing it into other films like in our discussion. Like what could we how is Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning like The Brutalist?
Oh, I think we could do that.
Okay.
Like should we get the score for that film over Happy Gilmore 2 as well? I think that would work. I think it would create that swell of feeling.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts?
No, I hope we get another one of these in a couple of years.
I don't even know what takeaway we should make from it being such a huge hit. This is actually quite unusual. There's been some discussion like how many franchises did the best movie arrive in the 6th one? That's obviously quite unusual, but Mission Impossible Fallout did just happen. Personally, the first film is my favorite and Fallout is my second, but a lot of people like Fallout best. You think of any other franchises that get this good this
Bond
late?
was popular upon its inception.
Yep.
I guess I can't really.
It's very unusual for them to level up in this way, but they did. We're very happy about it. Sierra, thank you.
Thank you
so
for having
much.
me, man.
Thanks to our producer, Jack Sanders. We'll be back later this week to talk about the film that Sierra just referenced, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. I need you to trust us one more time.